Today I'm going to review my stan list with you guys. I think we should just get into it because we do have a lot to go over. On the screen is the template. I'll go over the group, a bias if I have one, and my favorite song of that group's currently. Also, for every group that I mention, the solo artists within those groups are also just implied. If I stan a group, I also stan their solo works as well. I do not discriminate in that way. Yeah, let's begin. First is, of course, TWICE. They're the ult of ult groups for me. I think they always will be. I've always known about TWICE, but I think I really started to stan them. I became a once around 2017, around Likey, the Twistagram album. I could not choose a bias for the longest time, as is the case with a lot of my favorite groups, but Nyan really got me with Fancy. I think Yes or Yes was the last comeback that I didn't have a bias in TWICE, and it's been Nyan ever since. TWICE, along with this next group I'm going to talk about, are the foundational reason that still to this day I am chained to K-pop. Next is BLACKPINK. So I've been a Blink since day one, since day zero. I mention it at every chance that I can get. I was in the V Live when they debuted on August 8th, 2016, and I've been a Blink ever since that point. I'm very proud of that accomplishment. Really hoping that they have a group come back sometime in the near future, but I'm also really interested and have been excited to see what they do as solo artists going forward as well. They certainly deserve the time to focus on who they are as artists individually. My bias in BLACKPINK is Jennie. I didn't have a bias until around the dudut and solo period, so around 2018. Yeah. Next is Red Velvet. I've also been a fan of Red Velvet since as long as I can remember. I don't really have a time period that I can think of when I started standing them, but it had to have been around the same time as TWICE, so around mid to late 2017-ish. No bias for Red Velvet. This is just one of those groups where I have a lot of those where I cannot choose a bias in the group for some reason or another. Next is aespa. Started standing right at debut, and I certainly liked Black Mamba, but it was next level that I really became a Mai. Yeah, bias is Winter around the time of Savage. Next is SHINee. So SHINee, if you know a little bit about the choujimi lore, was actually my first K-pop group and my first introduction to K-pop as a thing, right? I think I started standing them around 2013 to 2014, and the song that introduced me to them and K-pop entirely was Stand By Me, the song that they did for the Boys Over Flowers OST. My bias is Minho. This actually happened relatively recently. For as long as I've stanned SHINee, Minho became my bias after Don't Call Me, so in 2021. It was a long time coming, definitely. Next is EXO. I genuinely don't remember when I first started standing EXO. Obviously, it had to have been sometime soon after SHINee, so around 2014, maybe 2015 at the latest. Monster was and is one of the hallmarks of my induction into K-pop. I know it is for a lot of K-pop stans. And then my bias in EXO is, you know, because I really feel like I've been unclear about who my bias in EXO could be. It's Kai, of course, who I don't really remember when I started standing or biasing Kai. I guess just 2014, 2015, I hadn't fully developed my consciousness yet. I don't really remember a whole lot from this time period. But yeah, I know I found EXO during this time at the very least. Next is BTS. The first time I remember reconciling with the existence of BTS, like acknowledging or recognizing that this was a group in the K-pop industry, was around Fire. And it wasn't until Not Today that I was fully registered in the army, I guess. So I would say I started standing around 2017 when You Never Walk Alone was released, which, I mean, in competition for album of the millennia, right? You Never Walk Alone is the representative album for BTS and for K-pop for me in a lot of ways. Just very excellent music. No bias for BTS, surprisingly. I've never been able to make that decision. Next is SSERAFIM. Started standing them since Fearless, since debut. Sour Grapes and The Great Mermaid. Really the whole debut EP, but those two songs specifically were what got me. And then they hit me with the 1-2 punch that was Anti-Fragile, and I have been a Fear Not since that point. And my bias is Chaewon since Anti-Fragile. Next is IVE, started standing since debut, and like SSERAFIM, I was a Wiz One. I've been saying that wrong since 2018. I always said Wise One, but it's supposed to be a play on with one, so it's more like Wiz One. So I was a Wise One, I was a fan of Eyes One. Wait, I said Wise One, I was a Wiz One, I was a fan of Eyes One, so of course, I was going to check into the post Eyes One activities. I showed up for 11, and for the longest time, did not see the vision with that song. It took me a long time, and I actually think it was just like a couple of weeks before Love Dive released that I really got into 11, but then we got Love Dive. The day that Love Dive released, I was all in, and there was no going back from that point. Yeah, no bias for IVE. Next is NewJeans. Started standing them since debut, since before the songs were released on streaming platforms. I got onto the wave by hearing people talk in the K-pop community, like complaining about how this group came out of nowhere, how the songs were so good, and how they needed to be released on streaming platforms as soon as possible, and it's been up and up since that point. Get Up is one of the best K-pop projects, best K-pop albums of all time in my opinion. I'll talk about it someday, but yeah, No bias for this group. Next is NCT, all of them, all of the groups. I do not discriminate. I started standing NCT in 2018. The Empathy album was what got me. Every song on that album is so excellent. Again, one of the representative albums of K-pop for me personally. I checked in for the first couple of releases. I remember really liking The Seventh Sense when it came out, but again, it wasn't until Empathy where I was like, okay, let me purchase some property in N-City. And then my bias is Mark Lee. Next is RIIZE. So I'm just now getting into RIIZE. I've been tuning into their releases. Impossible is my favorite song of theirs right now. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do in the future. I think RIIZE has a lot of potential to change the K-pop landscape for boy groups. So very interested to see what they do, and no bias in RIIZE right now. Next is Stray Kids. Oddly enough, I've been with Stray Kids since debut. Technically, by the time they debuted, I was too far gone in Twiceland. So of course, I was going to check out a new group under JYP Entertainment. I remember checking out Elevator when it was released and really liking it, and I kind of drifted to and from them as the years went on. It wasn't until I went to Korea, actually, that I started checking back up with Stray Kids. I went to the JYP Soul Cup Cafe, and their music videos were always playing on the big screen, specifically Thunderous, because it was released around the time I was there. Yeah, I really like Stray Kids. I think my bias is Felix or Bangchan, but really all of them. It's hard to choose. Stray Kids is one of those groups that I can't really give a definitive answer as to who is my bias. Next is ITZY. Again, have stanned ITZY since their debut, kind of pre-debut. I was a Once for Life at that point when they were announced to debut, and I was really excited to see what JYP would be doing with a new girl group. Immediately, Dalla Dalla clicked for me, and I was a mid-C from that point forward and have been ever since. No bias for ITZY. Next is NMIXX, also pre-debut. Of course, the JYP Entertainment groups. I regret to say that I did question OO at first. I quickly saw the error of my ways. It ended up becoming one of my top 5 most streamed songs of 2022. I really liked Dice as well, but Love Me Like This was the definitive time that I finally applied for an answer card, purchased some property in Mixtopia, if you will. No bias for NMIXX. Next is STAYC. So I started standing STAYC right at their debut. Again, it was me being a fanatical once that had to do with this. The idea that Black Eyed Peas sung was about to debut their own group. I was very interested to see what that would be and look like, and yeah, STAYC have really not disappointed me since, and I don't have a bias for STAYC, but I also think it's Xian. So yeah. Next is Promise 9. I don't remember when I first encountered the song Love Bomb, but when I did, it was over. I think it must have been around early 2019, and then I've just been showing up to their comeback since that point, and Promise has certainly not disappointed since that point. They continue to release some of the best musical projects the K-pop industry has ever seen, yet are continuously paid dust for it. Hopefully they get their recognition very, very soon. No bias for Promise. Next is TXT. I've been standing them since debut. Again, had to check out my cousins at Big Hits. I liked Crown. I saw the Vision with Cat and Dog pretty quickly after it released. I didn't get it at first, but then I eventually saw the Vision, and yeah, my appreciation for TXT has grown gradually over time. I think they're one of those groups where, for me, each release stacks so well on top of each other, and as of this most recent comeback, they're definitely one of the newer generation of boy groups that I actively look forward to seeing what they're going to do each time. Yeah, no bias for TXT. Next is (G)I-DLE, who I have technically followed (G)I-DLE since debut as well. I hate to bring it up, but me being a fan of Hyuna definitely hit its height in 2017 and 2018 around the time of Triple H, so I was frequently checking in on Cube artists, and I really liked (G)I-DLE's debut when I first heard it, and yeah, I've been a fan of (G)I-DLE ever since that point. They really got me with Senorita, actually, and no bias in (G)I-DLE. Next is 17. 17 was one of my first groups along with EXO after SHINee. I think around 2015, 2016 is when I started standing them. They got me with Aju Nice, and I just started backtracking after that point. Pretty You is one of the best K-pop songs of all time in my opinion. I love that song. My bias is Junghan, but there are so many others in 17 that I could consider as my bias. We got Minghao, Seungkwan. I'm a tax-paying and law-abiding citizen in Caroline. I love 17 very much. Next is LOONA adjacent, so OT12 LOONA and everything underneath that umbrella as it stands right now. I've had a weird trajectory with LOONA. I believe my first encounter with them was Jinso's Singing in the Rain when that was released, and I continued to check up on their pre-debut rollout period because a lot of people in K-pop were talking about how crazy it was. Little did we know how actually crazy it was. Yeah, I've had a weird trajectory with LOONA. I had all the makings of becoming like a crazy orbit, but somehow never really delved that deep into the fandom besides just checking up on their releases, I have a very soft spot for LOONA, and I do miss them as a group together, but I'm also incredibly happy that they're finally able to do their own thing. And as far as like OT12 LOONA goes, I never had a bias, and I just check up on all of the things that they're doing. Next is BBG, which, by the way, I am pronouncing that correctly. It's a combination of their names Eunbi, Shinbi, and Eumji, right? So B, and G. Come on. Anyways, I've really enjoyed all of their releases so far. I'm going to mention G-Friend later on, but I was a buddy, so of course I was going to check in and stan BBG. I've enjoyed all of their releases so far. I'm a staunch defender of Pull Up. I think that song did not get the justice that it deserves, but nevertheless, I'm a BBG stan and I do not have a bias for this group. Next is Kiss of Life. Same as before, I was going to check in on what Natty was doing due to the 16 show. I think Kiss of Life is just hitting all the right marks. I really can't wait to see them with bigger album projects in the future. Hopefully, a first full album is soon. Their most recent release has been their biggest success in Korea so far, so I think it would make a lot of sense for the next project that they do to be some kind of, full-scale album, but that's just maybe hopeful thinking, and I don't have a bias for Kiss of Life. Next is ILLIT. So I did not watch Are You Next. I certainly heard a lot about it across K-pop social media though, so I checked out their debut. Magnetic was good. I was a Lucky Girl Syndrome apologist, like extremist. I defended that song, not even to the point that it needed to be defended. I was such a big advocate for it because I think that song represents their concept the best. But yeah, I checked into ILLIT immediately. I really liked the album, but it wasn't until, ironically, the whole Hybador fiasco that I started to consider myself actually a fan of this group. Something about K-pop groups experiencing unnecessary hate trains just mobilizes me to become an even stronger fan of that group. So I'm a fan of ILLIT now, and no bias in ILLIT. Next is Kep1er. I also did not watch Girls Planet 999, but funny enough, I was living in Korea when that show aired, and my dorm roommate was watching the show when it was live, or when the episodes were releasing. I was getting live updates of the show, especially during the final episode, because his bed was right next to mine. So every time a shocking moment on the show would happen, he would pause it and tell me about it. So I remember a lot from the show, and I remember him getting so confused by the name Kep1er and couldn't believe the final lineup. There was so much going on. So with Kep1er, of course I was going to check in for their debut. I knew so much about them already. I was also a fan of CLC, so I was excited to see Yoojin have her moment. Wadada was good, but Up, I'm still processing or reeling from the fact that Up wasn't Kep1er's Ditto or Supernova, right? The song is so insanely good. One of the best K-pop songs of all time, in my opinion, genuinely. But yeah, I'm a Keplian. I endearingly call them Kep1er sometimes, and I have no bias in this group. Next is CHUNG, who has recently come out of a bit of a hiatus and is currently under a new label. I forgot how much I truly enjoy CHUNG's discography. She's obviously an incredible performer, and to me is currently the representative solo artist out of K-pop in a lot of ways. I think CHUNG is the best. No bias for CHUNG, I'm kidding. Next is MAMAMOO. I started standing MAMAMOO right at the start of their insane 2018 run at Starry Night. Egotistic got me, Windflower got me. That was a very underrated smash hit, Windflower is. Gogo Bebe got me. I was head Moo throughout the bulk of 2018, 2019, going into 2020. Patiently, currently, not so patiently waiting for an OT4 comeback, but I am also excited to see what they do as solo artists. Again, I think they deserve the time to be able to do what they want to do, and no bias for MAMAMOO. Next is BILLIE. I started getting into them by listening to their debut album from 2021 last year. The Village of Perception Chapter 1 is a classic body of work in K-pop. I won't take any other opinions on this. I need to one day make a video about it, just appreciating it for what it is. BILLIE is kind of living the Fromis 9 existence right now. They're not given nearly enough recognition for all that they contribute to K-pop. I need that to change very soon. But yeah, and also no bias in BILLIE. Next is ATEEZ. Also have known about them since debut. I had two friends, but technically one friend who was at ground zero of becoming an ATEEZ and would not stop playing Treasure on loop when that song was released when they debuted. Treasure is still to this day one of my favorite songs of theirs, but yeah, this past year or so, I would say I've been applying for my residency in Teeny Town, or is it Tiny Town? I don't know. And really, I have not been disappointed listening through their discography as a whole. They have the hits. They have hits, right? And no bias for ATEEZ. Next is the part-time residency section. So I do keep up with these groups and artists, but I don't necessarily know enough or am not involved enough to consider myself a full-on fan just yet. So we have ENHYPEN, IU, Sunmi, Somi, Everglow, A-Pink, XG, Vicha, Triple S, and Cat's Eye. Love all of these groups and artists. I'm cheering them on and I want to see them win. I hold my part-time residency in these groups and artists with great pride and honor. As for inactive and disbanded groups, I do have a lot of them, but the ones of note currently are FFX. I'm currently having a renaissance with their entire discography. Girls' Generation, of course. KDA, desperately waiting for a comeback. It's been almost 4 years at this point. G-Friend, of course, IZ*ONE, and Momoland. And I think that's it. Like I said, there are a lot more groups I keep up with. I am the multi-stan to end multi-stans in a lot of ways. These are just the top groups as of right now. There is not a K-pop group that I don't like. I don't believe in spending time and energy to hate groups and idols we really know nothing about to begin with. I don't think that should be in anyone's ministry. Personally, I think it's very miserable work all around. Even if you decide that you hate a group because of their fan base, I think that's even worse. I think that is the worst of the worst way to approach K-pop as a hobby, right? Anyways, let me get off my soapbox. All of that being said, thank you for watching this video if you did. If you stan any of the groups in the part-time residency section and you have song suggestions, or if you have song suggestions based on the favorites that I listed throughout the video, definitely let me know. Also, let me know your stan list if you want to as well. Thank you again for watching this. Subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time.